Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our third F5 Refresh and Reload virtual meetup powered by WEtech Alliance in partnership with Rise Windsor Essex and the Windsor Essex Economic Development Corporation. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Yvonne Pilon, and I'm the President and CEO of WEtech Alliance. And I will be responsible for moderating today's session, and I could not be more thrilled to welcome AmberMac, joining us live from her home base in Toronto, Ontario, to talk marketing tips, tech trends, and productivity how-tos. In order to accommodate and to consider everyone joining us, we're doing things a bit differently this time around compared to what we've done with other F5 meetups. So you might not see everyone's faces, but we will assure you that you're going to have plenty of time to engage with our guest today, AmberMac, through our Q&A session. So let's go through just a few logistics before we get started. So first, if you want to join the discussion, feel free to use the chat feature, which is just below your window, and you'll see the chat feature. So feel free to engage on some of the topics we're talking about or with other attendees. If you have a question for Amber, please feel free to share it at any point using the Q&A box. And again, that is just under your video window. Again, you can post questions or you can also upvote questions. So if you see a question that you're like, hey, I want to know the answer to that too, you can feel free to upvote it and we'll do our best to answer those questions. If you have any technical difficulties, we have producer Kate that was standing by to address any of your questions. Again, please feel free to use the chat feature there. And if you have kids at home, if there are kids right now that are sitting next to you, in fact, we have a really cool virtual kid sitting activity happening right now live with Story Values. So if you go to Story Values Facebook page right now, if you have another computer or device, your kids can be entertained with storytelling and art and creations. All you need to make sure is your kids have some paper and crayons, and they will be able to fully participate in the activity. And finally, you probably see this session is being recorded, and it's also being streamed live on Facebook. Why? Because we are sold out, and we wanted to ensure that everyone had a chance to participate today. Again, you are going to get all of this videos, any resources we talk about today in a follow-up email tomorrow. So at any point, don't worry about writing things down. We'll make sure that any links or topics or resources get sent to you. And if you would like any more information, whether you want to watch, whether you want to read, listen, or follow our speaker today, AmberMac, please check out her website at ambermac.com. And now I have the utmost pleasure to introduce not only a great friend to the Canadian and global tech community, but someone who I can honestly say has been one of my role models for a long time, AmberMac. So now I get to read this beautifully long, again, it's an amazing, amazing bio. So AmberMac is the president of AmberMac Media. She has keynoted more than 400 events around the world and has interviewed and moderated sessions with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, business coach Tony Robbins, and famed Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield, among so many other leaders. In 2010, she wrote the national best-selling business book, Power Friending. In 2006, she co-wrote the Amazon bestseller, Outsmarting Your Kids Online. And most recently, she started co-hosting a new podcast called Marketing Disrupted, which I can't recommend enough. Her other podcast series, The AI Effect, presented by Accenture, has won numerous awards. And I could list them all, but there's quite a few. She's a regular business host and expert for Fast Company, CNN, Bloomberg, CBC, BNN, CTV, and the Marilyn St. Dennis Show and Sirius XM, where she co-hosts The Feed. In 2008, she was named one of DMZ's 30 most inspirational women making a difference in tech. AmberMac has had a career from San Francisco and Boston during the dot-com era, where she spent a lot of time in the tech startup trenches. After leaving the startup world, she joined Microsoft to build one of the first female-focused lifestyle portals. In 2006, she started her own digital agency, which is AmberMac Media In the company's first kind of clients was world-renowned business coach Tony Robbins, and she now serves companies such as Microsoft, Google, GE, PayPal, Nintendo, Canada Goose, and Fast Company, and so many more leading organizations. Amber, as a child, attended a two-room country schoolhouse and shared a party telephone line with neighboring houses. She is now recognized internationally as in the innovation technology as an innovation technology leader. Now I'd like to invite Amber to show off her face and join us through video today. Hello.
Hi there.
Hello, it is so wonderful. It's so weird using this webinar feature because I feel like I'm talking to nobody. So Amber, thank you so much. As you can see, Amber's got the full amazing production studio and she's got so much for us today. So Amber, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about tonight's event, and I can actually see the chat room. So if there are questions and comments coming in, please keep them coming. And in my opinion, no question is really off limits. I'm happy to answer anything. And I hope most importantly, just to bring lots of value to the conversation and join a bunch of fellow entrepreneurs and people building businesses during a very difficult time.
Awesome, awesome. So we wanted to start off with a poll. We wanted to get a better understanding of the topics you really want Amber to focus on. So we've got Kate, who's just put out of a poll. So we want to look at your top topic you look forward to Amber talking about tonight. Is it marketing tips, productivity tips, or tech trends? And of course, I'm the tech trends girl, but we see here we're looking at marketing tips seems to be 60% or so. All right, we've got a bit of looks like marketing tips, Amber, is one of the key areas of focus we want to talk about today. So thank you, Kate. We can get rid of that poll. So we want to get started, jump right into questions. It's so important to maximize this hour we have with Amber. So we want to get started just with some really easy kind of break the ice types of questions. And we submitted these to Amber in advance. So I believe she has a presentation just to go through it. So I'm going to say first, what is the best piece of advice you've ever got?
That is a great question, and I'm glad that you shared that with me because I wanted to share a story about one of my first clients when we started our own agency, which is Tony Robbins. And of course, many people may know Tony. He's an incredible business coach, speaker. He does these really robust multi-day sessions where he teaches people really how to live their best lives. And when I started working with him with our small team back in about 2006, and I attended his first event, I'll never forget it because he said something at that event that I've really held on to. And what that is that many people from the time they're really young, they develop a blueprint of how they imagine their life to be. And we've all done this. I did this growing up in rural Prince Edward Island where, I had these visions of what I was going to do and who I was going to be. And, I thought I would, get married young, have 5 kids. And I kind of, held on to that for a really long time. And a lot of what he talks about is how important it is to get rid of that blueprint. Because at the end of the day, none of us can really control our fate and where we're heading. And there are changes that are going to come along the way. I think we're all seeing this now in 2020 and 2021. So at the end of the day, I think that piece of advice is probably the best piece of advice, something he talks about all the time. And I would also recommend it to people who are watching right now. Maybe you had a blueprint of what 2020 was going to look like. We've had to throw that out the window. And 2021, maybe you think it's going to look like something entirely different. And you're going to have to probably throw that out the window because we just don't know. And I think there's freedom really in letting go of that blueprint and just really carving your own path.
Awesome. Next question. What is I've seen you on stage many times. So what's your walk-on song or your pump-up song?
All right. So in terms of one of my favorite bands, for many, many years, I've been a huge fan of The Killers. And one of the reasons I just mentioned The Killers is because I actually like all of their songs. So it's always nice to have that go-to band where you just enjoy listening to all of their music. I've seen them multiple times live and really just enjoy their energy. And I find it's the type of music that you can listen to at any time. So for me, it would definitely be The Killers. It has that energy to it, but also a bit of a seriousness in terms of some of the lyrics of their music.
Awesome. Next question is and again, I hope these are in order, the best binge of 2020.
Okay, so this actually goes along the lines of what we just talked about with the Killers, because if you're a fan of the Killers or other artists, you will really enjoy this series on Netflix called Song Exploder. It is so awesome, especially if you're a geek like me and you love this idea that they essentially take hit songs and they kind of unpack them and show you with the artists themselves how those songs were brainstormed, how they were created, all of the details around how that song came to be and the many iterations along the way. So if you're looking for something really good to watch that I think you can even watch with the whole family, I would say Song Exploder is a really simple binge, and the episodes are also relatively short.
I have not watched that one. So feel free in the chat if you want to share some of your binges for 2020. Our next question is the silver lining of the pandemic. So there's got to be something that you find was the silver lining of 2020 and maybe 2021. We're still in it.
So I kind of have three things that I put together when I was thinking about 2020 and 2021. And I think, it's hard because when you say silver lining, everybody assumes that's really wonderful stuff that has come to be during a difficult time. But I would say that I would fit these three different things into one overall category. And what I mean by that is I think what the pandemic has done here in Canada is really exposed cracks in our society and in our system that we perhaps haven't talked enough about, starting with long-term care, which is a story that I've been following for a long time. And many people may think, okay, well, all of a sudden in long-term care, we have an issue during this pandemic. But the reality is, if you look back at the history of long-term care, it's been many years, if not decades, where we really haven't treated these seniors, these residents in a good way in these homes. So it's exposed those cracks. The second piece is our education system. I think what we're seeing as well in terms of the silver lining is that we've seen that we just haven't invested enough in our education system over the years. That's really come to light over the past 9 months or so, knowing that we're hesitant to invest into education when arguably that is the most important thing that we can invest in terms of the future of this country. And we haven't done that even in a crisis, which is pretty unbelievable in terms of not wanting to do things like reduce class sizes and make sure the students are as safe as possible. And then finally, I think this one is probably the most relevant for all of the women who are watching right now, is that what we're seeing right now, again, in terms of that silver lining, is exposing those cracks in a system that we have in place. And that system involves a lot of invisible work that women are doing. And, I see this in my life as well. During this pandemic with virtual school and running my business and running the house, women are historically putting in so many more hours in the home with their children. And what does that do in terms of women and the workforce and our stress and anxiety? And we've been overloaded over the past 9 months or so. But again, that's been a crack in the system that's existed for a long time, but it's very transparent now, knowing that when the kids are at home, it tends to fall on the women who are doing a lot of the work in the house. And this is that invisible labor piece of it. So I would say if I can try to put kind of a positive spin on a horrendous almost year, that spin is that we are seeing more and more. I know someone in the chat, I think Kate is saying it's kind of a year of reckoning. We're seeing those cracks in the system. People are speaking up. I mean, this is one of the things that I'm loving watching on social media is people finding their voice and speaking up and defending the people who are voiceless. And I hope to see more and more of that in 2021 because we need it.
And if you've been following AmberMac on Twitter, she has been a big, loud voice for long-term care. So thank you for all of your advocacy there. Shifting gears a bit, you have interviewed a lot of people, 400 according to your bio. Who's been one of your favorite individuals that you've interviewed?
I had to really think about this one because I have had a great opportunity in terms of interviewing a really diverse range of people. But probably the person I've loved interviewing the most is Margaret Atwood, of course, the literary icon. She is just so fantastic. And I'll share a little bit of a story here. And this wasn't an interview, but she had come into our studio to do a virtual keynote of her own. And it was just my husband and Margaret Atwood and myself in the studio. And we were talking afterwards, and we were talking about the pandemic and what was happening in 2020. And she said, and I will never forget this because she's very witty. And if you ever listen to Margaret Atwood, you have to really be an active listener because she has a lot of great one-liners. And she was talking about the pandemic, and we were talking about the next generation, and why did it seem that perhaps the next generation wasn't paying as much attention as they should be to what was going on? And she said, well, the problem is that they believe that history started the day that they were born. And when she said that, I just got chills because I started to think about my own experience, although perhaps I'm not as young as the people she was talking about. But it is true that when we start to look back at history and all of the challenges that we've faced as Canadians and people all around the world, we recognize that there have been many difficult times, and we have been able to get through those times. And I find great strength knowing that that is a reality. So I really think that she's probably one of my favorite people that I've interviewed just because of those words of wisdom. And she's so witty, she's so funny, and just a really, really lovely person.
I've never met Margaret Atwood. She has retweeted one of my posts, but fun fact, she also, I believe she has a residence on Pelee Island here in Windsor, Essex County. So she has a bit of a home here in our region. So a little bit of a fun fact there. And our last kind of icebreaker question is, what is the best book you've read in 2020? And for those that are listening in, feel free to share yours on the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see what other people are reading as well. So I tried to do quite a bit of reading over the holiday season, and my husband bought me this book. I'm a huge fan of the Pivot podcast. It is such an excellent podcast. I know, thumbs up, right?
One of my favorites, Kara Swisher and the dog.
Oh, it is so good. And it's so real and authentic, and they're just great together. So Scott Galloway, one of the hosts, AKA the dog, he recently put out a book called Post-Corona, and it's called Post-Corona: From Crisis to Opportunity. And I would argue that this is probably my best and favorite book of at least the latter half of 2020, just because I love reading content that is so timely, so relevant. And in it, he just has these amazing stories of what's taken place over the past year, and talking specifically about some of the opportunities that do exist, especially in this time of change. So if you're looking for a really easy and accessible read that is a great inspirational business book, I read this in just a couple of days, and I had my sticky notes and I was writing all these little notes in, and it's just a fantastic read.
I couldn't agree more on Scott Galloway and the Pivot podcast. So not sure what everyone's listening to in terms of podcasts, but if you haven't checked out Pivot, it is a great podcast. And I believe Scott Galloway has his own, and I can't think of the name of it. Amber, do you remember the name of his new podcast?
The Prof G podcast. So
yes, the Prof G.
Yeah. He's doing all my tech in studio as usual.
Oh, wonderful. So that's great. Okay. Well, we've loosened up. I'm seeing some great questions come in. A reminder, you can put your questions in. We just ask that you try to use the Q&A function, just so we can kind of go that. So I see we've got 4 questions in the queue. So we're just going to go through a few of the questions we sent Amber in advance geared towards marketing productivity. But the first question, we've talked about it. 2020 was a wild ride, to say the very least. And so what are some of the tricks, mechanisms for coping that you've embraced when it comes to, the uncertainty, stress, anxiety? So what are you doing, Amber?
I think, first of all, I will just say that I am not immune from any of the realities of what's gone on in 2020, in the sense that I've had those days where, like all of us, where we felt an enormous amount of stress and anxiety, and whether it's worrying about the health concerns that we have, or my child being isolated socially, or my business, the reality is it's been a lot to manage all of that. I think if I have to really be honest about how I've dealt with stress and anxiety, I think I've done a few things. One is that I've started doing breathing exercises, which I've never really done in a serious way. So I downloaded an app from Wim Hof. It's called the Wim Hof Method. And you just do these deep breathing exercises. And I didn't realize this, but I think many of us can appreciate data behind why you would do something. Apparently in just 60 seconds, you can actually reduce your state of stress simply by breathing. And I had a hard time kind of doing that on my own. So that app is one that I really enjoyed using. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is also to be able to just take things day by day. I mean, I know that sounds like an obvious thing, but I know a lot of people have been trying to plan out 6 months or a year. And then to go back to that Tony Robbins advice, what we're doing is we're creating a blueprint of what 2021 is going to look like. And we're stuck to that blueprint. And then all of a sudden we have an emergency order in the province and everything's changing again. So I've felt sort of like I've always been very fluid with change. And I think that's helped me adapt as well. And then focusing on exercise has been a real priority for me over this time. And I have a little space in my home where I can now do exercise at home, and finding that time where I'm able to do just that. Without all of those things, I think I would have a very difficult time. So I feel for people who are still struggling with this.
We're seeing in the chat just, connecting with Mother Nature. And I think we've all never enjoyed being outside and just going for a walk. Something that I heard on a call I was on many months ago was just doing a walk and talk. So instead of taking a Zoom call, is take a phone call and go for a walk. And it's kind of like a walking day. And I know it's really saved me, and really, when you just feel like heavy, it's just that fresh air is reinvigorating sometimes. So we're here in 2021, and along with a new year, usually we do a reflection, but we also look at resolutions and goals. So Amber, how do you set your goals, and perhaps maybe share some of your goals for 2021 with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things like we all do at the beginning of a new year is just think about some of those goals that you have top of mind. For me personally, I think those goals involve a lot of where our business is going here at AmberMac Media, and trying to really just experiment with new business models. And what I mean by that is historically with our business, we have repeat clients, but a lot of the work that we do also involves me being present, right? Doing speaking events and doing television appearances or radio appearances. And I've always liked this idea of being able to make money while you sleep. And so that is the nut that I want.
4-Day Work Week. I remember that book.
Right? And I'll probably never get to the 4-Day Work Week because I do enjoy my work too much to get to that point. But I do love this idea that with the virtual environment being even more important than it's ever been, this idea that I think new business models are going to arise. And I think opportunities for things like online learning, especially among professionals, I think there's going to be some really unique opportunities there. So one of my goals is to try to experiment and do some projects where we focus on some of those opportunities that exist in terms of digital products that we can develop. That's a big one. And to be honest with you, I think other than that, my focus right now is honestly just continuing to see the business grow. And most importantly, because my son is an only child, and I'm sure there's lots of moms watching right now, just making sure that his physical and mental health is really the most important thing right now. He's going to be 12 in a couple of weeks. And I'm just always trying to remember that he's not going to have a birthday party. He's not going to have a sleepover. He's not going to be with his friends. This is very different. And that's a critical time in your life. And I know the moms who are watching can relate to this. But for me, it's just making sure everybody is healthy, right? If my little group is healthy and I can keep them safe, then that is a goal that is worth fighting for.
And I think too, I've heard a lot about, let's stop striving for perfection and just strive for continuous improvement. I think as women too, we're always looking to be perfectionists. And I think at this point, it's okay not to be, and having that real conversation. Again, and in full disclosure, I have no kids. So I don't know what it's like, and I can only imagine what it's like having to homeschool your child, run a business. So again, big shout out to all the moms out there who are just making things happen. So, okay, so I'm going to skip a few of the questions because I really want to get into some of the marketing stuff and productivity, because I'm seeing some questions come in there. So Amber, how do you stay organized and productive, right? I know, again, you seem to have so much going on. So I know there's one other question we got is, how do you stay productive and on point?
So I am notorious for making lists. I don't just make lists for myself. I make lists for my husband. And since he's sitting 8 feet away from me, he can attest to that. So I find some days can be really overwhelming, right? You have those days where you have a lot on the go and it can feel like the ground is falling out beneath you. And I totally understand that. But what I do find at the same time, I will always have a notebook with me and a pen, and I'll make lists of what I have to do. And then I'll kind of look at the list and I'll think to myself, this is not actually that bad. And I'll start to cross things off and I can get through them. But I don't think that list has to be something that, I'm the only one in charge of. And this is something I see among my female friends all the time, is that they take on so much in the home and in their businesses and in their professions. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I have the luxury of having other people in my house, I start to make lists for them, and I put them on the counter, and I get them to help out with things that need to be done. And so for me, it just feels like women are not necessarily always good at asking for help. And it sometimes leads to confrontation and a lot of emotion coming out. And so now I don't have that emotion. I just write a list of like, hey, these are the 4 things I need you to do so I can focus on my stuff and I'm able to really stay in control of the day. So I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help. And that helps me to stay organized. And also, I didn't mention this in the health question, but I don't work with this company, but I've been wearing this Whoop band for 6 months or so. And it's an activity tracker. It tracks your sleep, your strain. You never have to take it off. You just put a little battery on top for an hour once a week to charge it up. And it tracks all of those details. And this has been a real lifesaver for me because I used to really burn the candle at both ends. And so what I'm finding now, I can really see that after 4 or 5 days, you're in the red. That means you're deficient on sleep. You're not, your recovery is not good. So all of those data points have helped me to really take better care of myself, which has been so important because I wouldn't say that for the years before COVID-19, even though I probably was delusional and thought I was doing a good job, I really don't think I was.
So you talk about wearables. I am planning to buy myself an Apple Watch for Christmas. Haven't done it yet, but I did get the Withings sleep mat tracker. So that's been really good for me. I really strive. Sleep is something that I don't want to ever sacrifice. So it's been really interesting. It's almost like a gamification with my partner of like who got the better sleep. Usually I win, but it's been really interesting to have that. So working remotely, we're all doing it. We're likely, it doesn't look like it's going to be anything, it's going to change anytime soon. So what have you found out that's worked? And again, Amber, you also have a soon to be 12-year-old son, so you're likely doing homeschooling or, remote learning. So what advice do you have for those, moms, entrepreneurs out there who are dealing with, again, children at home and working from home?
Well, I would say that I might be late to the party on this one, but I have always been one of those people who's been totally okay just grabbing my laptop and working anywhere, right? Like I'll do a call, I'll sit on the ground or the couch. I don't really care. But having been in my house for the past 9+ months, so for so many hours in the day, just this weekend, I actually had a chance to take the whole Saturday and I carved out this space in our dining room and I kind of turned it into a little office space and reading room. It's very, very small, but it has actually meant a lot of peace in my life since I did that just a couple of days ago, because I was recognizing that I just didn't have that space where I can go. So I think in terms of that remote work, I think it's really important, even if it's just a corner of your bedroom or if you have a spare room or you have a basement, making it something that is really beautiful. Like I put a candle in there and, I made it as pretty as possible. And for me, that has just really helped because I was finding the days kind of chaotic and I was just working anywhere and everything felt like it was out of control. So I just have this little space that I feel is very neat and tidy and it's a good place to work.
Awesome. So we have so many questions coming in from, again, on the chat. Amber, if you're okay, we're just going to jump in because I really would rather answer questions that these women that are joining on the call. So I'm going to jump in. This is a question from, and I apologize if I am mispronouncing your name, but Margaret Atwood. Social media is such a demand to stay on top of when it comes to marketing your business, especially when you have bricks and mortars. What are the new trends in social media marketing? And this is coming from Merja at Dressed by an Olive Inc., a great company here in Tecumseh, Ontario.
That is a great question. So I think in terms of social media and marketing, I think we're seeing a lot more where video continues to be prominent in any type of marketing that you're doing. So For me personally, I think the trends that I'm paying the most attention to are social video. How can you create one piece of video content that can be distributed to multiple channels? That's why we do so many Facebook Lives like you're doing right now, is that we will go and do a 30-minute Facebook Live, and then we will slice and dice it. So we have short little 1-minute clips for Instagram. We have clips for Twitter, Instagram stories. So how do you create one piece of content that can be distributed into multiple channels or multiple platforms? So I think that's probably the one trend that is probably the most important. And I think if we think about some of the other trends, I think automation is probably a big one as well. And what I mean by automation is just finding those apps that can really automate a lot of those manual tasks that you have to do when it comes to social media. So last year I started using an app that I think I had dabbled using this before, but it's called InShot. And it's a really great app that will help you do quick little video edits. You can even do Instagram Reels with InShot, because the functionality in Instagram Reels to create Reels is really cumbersome. So InShot allows you to create little videos that you can use as Reels, and that kind of automates the process. I also use an app called Headliner, and that allows you to caption any audio that you may have if you are experimenting in audio. And then I think with social media, the last thing I'll say is podcasting, and not like, hey, I'm going to do 52 episodes of a podcast this year. But anyone can start a podcast. There's lots of tools out there like anchor.fm, and you're able to create a podcast, even just a short run series if it's 6 episodes. I am talking super fast. My lovely partner, Chris, I'm going to let him go into the comments. Someone's asking, it's the Wim Hof app. Chris, if you don't mind just writing it down, and then maybe the apps that I just mentioned as well.
And we'll try to summarize in that follow-up email, we'll try to summarize some of the key takeaways and some of the activities here. Okay, so the next question is coming from Sarah Roddy, and I know, Amber, you know Get in the Loop very well. So Sarah is the Get in the Loop representative here for Windsor, Essex. What impact on small businesses do you foresee with the latest iOS privacy changes? Consumers will be able to opt out of targeted ads.
Well, yes. I mean, if you use Facebook advertising, you have noticed at the top of your Facebook page that they have been talking about this for the past few weeks in terms of people being able to opt out of some of the advertisements and targeted advertising. I think this will have a big impact, but to be honest with you, I think there's going to be more of this to come. I think we have to get really comfortable with this idea that these tech platforms, these big social media platforms right now, have an enormous amount of power. And we've seen that over the past week or so, whether it's Apple or Facebook or Twitter. I wouldn't depend on any of them for your marketing success. Obviously use them, but think more about content creation as something you can also build up on your own. So maybe it's an email newsletter, maybe it's a podcast. I'm not saying don't rely on those channels, but I think understand that this age of privacy is just going to continue to get more intricate, and we're going to continue to see some of these platforms that aren't able to target as effectively as we have seen over the past. So what does that mean to all of us? That means that we have to get better at creating community, right? I mean, that means that, it's a little bit more work in some ways to go out there and build a community on these platforms. But it is possible to do just that by engaging in conversations and being present on those platforms. So just to wrap up the answer to that question, I think I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I would just see it as a sign of things that are going to continue in 2021 and beyond.
Thanks, Amber. Great question, Sarah. Our next question is, does Amber use apps like Monday.com or Smartsheets to track projects?
No, I don't, but I'm very familiar with Monday. So we don't use that for project management. I'll give you kind of a quick rundown of some of the tools. And I just want to thank Chris, who's putting in the apps that I mentioned into the chat. So Chris, thank you so much for that. Yeah, he is used to me at the last minute asking him to do random stuff like this. So this is his list for tonight.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, cool. He's going to add in one more for the podcast. He also teaches at Sheridan in terms of multimedia, so he might be adding stuff in there that is above and beyond what I've even mentioned. So I don't use Monday. So as a company, we're a very small company, so we have 5 employees and many subcontractors. So the tools that we use are Slack for collaboration. I don't know what we would do without Slack, but that is the number one tool that we use for collaborating on projects. We use a lot of Google products as well for staying on track, whether it's just Docs or Sheets or any of those tools. We also use a web-based tool called Confluence, and that is kind of like a wiki where we work on projects on that all in one place. So I'm familiar with Monday, but we don't use it all that much.
Awesome. Again, just a reminder, please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A. Our next question is a bit of a lighter one, but I think a fun one. Tell us your most embarrassing blooper.
Oh my gosh, my most embarrassing blooper. Is that what you said, the blooper?
Yeah, bloopers, and it is from someone in the non-attendee.
Okay, so, oh God, I can't believe I'm bringing this up because I'm thinking that the woman who made this is actually watching. So for some reason, this is so embarrassing. There are 2 or 3 women on social media. I'm assuming they're women just based on their names, but I don't really know. And for years, they have been watching every live stream that I've ever done. When I was hosting on G4 Tech TV, when I was doing my video podcast, Command N, and they have been compiling these montages of me sneezing. And it's just so strange and embarrassing because now anytime I go live, no matter where it is, they tweet at me or they message me, oh, looks like you were going to sneeze. You looked a little uncomfortable. So I would say that I haven't had this issue lately, but apparently for years, I would just randomly sneeze when I was on air on a podcast or in video. And it's grown into this, just like, I'm terrified now of even looking at the light and sneezing because I know it will end up in my feed any day now. My husband's laughing.
All right, the next question is coming from Katie Stokes of Blab Media. And her question is, what are some tips you would give to a small marketing agency that's looking to scale up in size?
That's a great question, Katie. So I would just say that, first of all, I would ask the question, why do you need to scale up in size? If you mean number of employees, I don't know if Katie can kind of add to that question in the comments, but I think we often think that bigger is better and that we should always be growing our companies to the point where we're always adding new people to the roster. I have found over the years that, and there's Jason Fried is a great author to follow. He talks a lot about how small can be beautiful, especially in the world of small business. And there are many examples of how, if you're a small marketing agency, that you don't need necessarily to hire more employees, but you can use a subcontractor model, which is basically how we work. When we need podcast producers, we hire them, but we don't employ them full time because they have other things to do. So I would first ask you that question is, what is the motivation for growth? Can you fill those gaps in terms of having more subcontractors as part of your team? And if you mean growing from a financial standpoint and having goals in mind for revenue that you want to be able to reach per year, I think at the end of the day, a lot of this is about limiting your costs. We're seeing this right now during the pandemic, is that maybe you don't need that fancy office space. Maybe you don't need all those online services that you're subscribing to. One of the first things that we did at the beginning of the pandemic, because I wasn't really 100% sure how things were going to turn out. We had just hired a full-time saleswoman who is amazing. Her name's Jessica. She started, 2 months before COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I was used to, physically going places, and that's how we made money, a good percentage of it. And so we started to cut a lot of our costs, like went through all of our accounting and said, what services are we using that we no longer need to use? Where are there opportunities for savings? So if you want to grow, I think you first have to think about some of those costs in your business, reduce the cost if possible, obviously increase the revenue at the same time if it's possible. Think about subcontractors as an option as well. And then think about opportunities to offer services if you're a small marketing agency and specializing in something that no one else really does or no one else really does well. I find that, being in a general space right now is not really advantageous. I think if anything, The one advantage that we've had is that it's very specific. We focus on anything that has to do with technology and innovation. And I think you can apply that same model to a small marketing agency. What's your sweet spot? Is it podcasts? Is it social video? Is it Instagram? Have a couple of those things where you know you can really nail it and win in terms of the competition.
Thanks. The next question it's very much towards scaling up as an entrepreneur. So what tasks did you first delegate, outsource as your business opportunities grew? I realize I can't do it all to scale my consulting business. I'm a mom, full-time professor, and business owner.
So I think that's the hardest thing for an entrepreneur to do, is to actually ask for help and to find opportunities to hire people, whether it's a freelance subcontract or employees, and then also to find people that you trust. I mean, this is one thing that has really worked for me, is that, and it may not work for everybody, so please don't follow this model, but my mom and dad work within our business. So my dad does all of our contract negotiations, all of our financial planning. My mom does our bookkeeping. My husband is our director of production. My brother manages all of our digital marketing and social media. And then we have other people we work with as well. But we've created this sort of core group of people, and we all really trust each other. And that was the most important thing for me. I've worked at enough companies where I didn't have that sort of that safety of feeling as though I could trust everyone. So for me, that if you were just one person or two people and you were thinking of branching out, where can I invest that makes the most sense? I'd say it's in some of those boring areas like bookkeeping and financial, any type of financial planning. And you can get people to help you out with that. It doesn't have to be a lot, but that investment, like as soon as we got our books kind of in order and we started to understand our financial forecasts and have revenue goals and all of that, I got to do the stuff that I loved, which is content creation, right? So I think you really need to think about what you're good at and offload some of the stuff. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Like we are working with a podcast producer right now who is my friend's son, and he's a student and he's fabulous. And, he's working a few hours here and there for us, but there are lots of those people out there. So you don't always have to think in really big terms to start.
We have another question coming from Alexandra. With all of your experience in the virtual online world, what advice would you give an event startup entering the virtual online world? So as you know, you're a speaker, so I've seen you on stage, so your life has pivoted over 2020. So yeah, so what advice would you give to someone looking to enter the event space?
That is an awesome question. And I think also it's a fantastic opportunity. So let me just start there, because what's happening right now in the event space, and I've seen this firsthand, is that event organizers that are organizing physical events who have done it for 20, 30 years are having a heck of a time adapting to this virtual world. They have a structure within their organization that is dependent upon booking physical spaces and doing logistics and having people in a room together. So if you're just starting a virtual events company, I think that's a huge advantage, because you can design something from the ground up that's actually going to work. The second thing I will say is that every single events person that I have spoken to has agreed that physical events are never going to go back to what they were. There's always going to be, people keep using the term hybrid, but I believe that it's not even hybrid. I think virtual events will just continue to thrive. And that's a reality, and then, thus an opportunity. And the third thing that most people forget about with virtual events, I mean, you're doing a great job of this right now, is engagement. I can't tell you how many events I go to, and they made sure that everybody is looking great and sounding great. But what they don't do is talk to the people who are in the audience, right? And they leave that to the end. So if you can figure out an opportunity to do something in the virtual event space that is engaging, then I think, again, there's just not a lot of companies who are doing a great job of that. And we're experimenting every day and try new things and push the boundaries. I mean, to your point of perfection, I'm okay failing at something. I don't want to fail in a big way, but I'm okay trying new things, basically.
Perfect. The next question coming in from an anonymous person. What advice do you have for someone wanting to get into public speaking opportunities and podcast guesting? Is something I know you know very well.
Well, I would say that first of all, in order to get speaking opportunities, you have to do a lot of free speaking, and that's just part of the game, right? So, especially now, I mean, I don't know if people realize this, but many of the big speakers bureaus are really struggling, or they've had layoffs over the past 9 months to a year. The whole model is changing and shifting. So, I think again, I see this only as an opportunity in many ways. So one is don't wait for someone to come to you and ask you to speak at their event. Start doing live streams, do a live stream on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, and start to practice speaking. As someone who's done hundreds of events and who is speaking all the time, I will tell you that when I stopped speaking over the summer because there's a break in events, I'm really rusty, and I've been doing this for a long time. So even I know that the more I speak, the better I am at speaking. So I would just say, try to do that as much as possible. And then in podcasting, there's nothing to stop you from starting, if that makes sense. So, if you really want to start a podcast, get a cheap little mic and start your podcast, and make sure yeah, exactly. I've had
this is from a recommendation from AmberMac.
I've had that mic for years. We have a couple of them. So get yourself invest $100 in some inexpensive equipment and just start the podcast. I mean, honestly, like, we are in a pandemic. This is a full-on crisis. Now we have new emergency orders. What the heck do you have to lose right now? Honestly.
It's a good point.
If you're going to try something, you might as well try now, because I think people are, one, forgiving. Number two, people are online a lot, so they may be able to more easily find you. They're less distracted. And three, the tools are just getting better and better and more accessible all the time. So just go out there and try it, right? There was no one I looked to as a role model as a woman in tech when I got into this industry, and that sucked. I had no one to really, model or have as a mentor. And now I think the cool thing is that there's people, all across this country doing amazing things. And if there's no one in your space who's that person, try to become that person, and just go out there and give it a whirl. There's not a lot to lose right now.
All right. The next question is, how do you stay motivated, disciplined to stick through working on a big project?
So honestly, I think that a lot of that is just kind of work ethic. And I grew up in rural Prince Edward Island, and I started working in my family's business at a really young age. And whether we were having a garage sale or my parents had started a business venture, I was involved in some capacity starting at the age of 8. So I haven't been afraid of work at all. So I think when it comes to any type of big project, I tend to do this, and my husband will attest to this. I don't try to do a big project necessarily all at once. I did make my little workspace in a day, but typically I chip away at it. And that's another thing I think that people can really get into the habit of doing is whatever that big project is, just set aside, 30 minutes or an hour or whatever you need on a daily basis. Just chip away at it, and you'll be amazed how quickly you'll be able to get to that point where your project is close to completion. So I'm not afraid to start something and then stop it. I don't need to be all in on that one thing. Another app I'll recommend just on that front is an app called Freedom. There is a small fee associated with it, but it helps you to have those focus times where, so often when we are trying to get work done, we're distracted by Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be. And this allows you to block those apps across all of your devices at once and, have that focus time. So again, the app is called Freedom. If you want to check it out, I can see already that Chris is dropping it in the chat.
Awesome. We've got some for the mic. It is, I think, Amber, it's called Blue, but I believe it's an ice product, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so it's the Blue Snowball, and it's by a company called Blue, and Chris is going to drop it into the comments. I've been using this mic for, I don't know, a decade plus. I have the older version and the newer version. It's a USB mic that you can plug in. It's really durable and super easy to set up. And it was recommended to me by a gentleman I worked with years ago. And we have other more expensive mics, but this usually does the trick.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's under $100. I know with our podcast, the Tech in the City podcast that I host, I use Podbean. It's about $150 annually. So it's super affordable. You don't need to go into a full production studio. Again, I know a lot of people that do it just through Zoom and leveraging the audio file and doing their own editing there. So we want to help Sue. Sue's got a bunch of questions, marketing advice needed. Really looking at where you advertise your business, how often you advertise your business per week, and do you always sell when advertising?
So we do some advertising specifically on Facebook and Instagram, but typically what we do is content creation that inevitably will sell our services. So the weekly newsletter that I do, and I've been doing for a few years, I mean, that's a great example of a tool that will help to market what we do, because I'll include things that have happened during the week, whether it's projects that we've done or just content that is of interest. So I think creating kind of an ecosystem around you where you don't have to spend a lot on advertising is probably a good idea, but you're creating content across these platforms to promote what you do. So that would really be my recommendation, and in many ways can be more cost effective. And I do want to say, I see quite a few questions coming in, so I can be really quick. I know we only have 10 minutes or so feel free to do like rapid fire if you're worried about that.
Yeah, it's such awesome questions, and so they vary. So let's go into this. So I love this question. What do you recommend as the best tip to bust through all the noise online these days to get greater impact?
Oh, I mean, I think it's getting harder than ever to actually do that. But I would say I think I saw a question kind of similar to this coming in there. I think the one platform that is sort of underestimated in terms of the value of the platform, I think it's Twitter. I really believe that that is a powerful platform, especially if you are starting a business where media is important to you in terms of PR. All of the people in media in this country use Twitter on a regular basis. They're easy enough to DM or build relationships with them. Politicians are all on Twitter. I mean, it is the platform that you may not think about. Why would I use that for marketing? It's not like traditional marketing, but you are able to build a really strong brand on Twitter. So I think that is probably one of the most undervalued platforms out there. That has huge potential. And I know, Yvonne, I know you know that as well. I see you on Twitter a lot.
I love Twitter's that's my home base. I guess that answers another question. Are there any other, Alessandra has a similar question about, the best social media for best reach and impact. So are there any things like we have TikTok coming out, like, are there any other platforms that you'd suggest that people look to explore? Obviously knowing it needs to match where their customers are, right? So.
Yeah, so let me just do like a super fast rundown of what I use each platform for and where I see the opportunity.
Right.
I think Facebook Live has the best live streaming engagement tools of any platforms out there. I also think they make it easy to boost content and do tiny little ad buys around any content that you produce. So if you're going to do live streaming, I think Facebook is the best place to do it. If you're trying to reach media and get media attention, as I mentioned, I think Twitter is the best place to do it. If you are in the world of lifestyle, I think Instagram, clearly I don't have to tell anyone this, is probably the best platform, although it's getting so hard to get attention and growth there. I mean, it's just, it's like the slowest moving platform if you want to get growth. So that's a difficult one, but still so important for lifestyle. And then I think in terms of really quick growth, if you can master it, I think TikTok is probably the best opportunity to kind of supercharge your growth, because if you get picked up by their algorithm and you create really compelling content, you can grow super quickly there. And also, there's lots of opportunities on TikTok to do really fun and engaging content, but I'm seeing more and more people are there, even, demystifying misinformation about COVID-19. I mean, there's a role for that type of content there as well.
So this is a question, and it's specific to a question about, I'm starting a small marketing agency. What is your advice on someone entering a very saturated market? And I think this could be if you're an entrepreneur, perhaps in photography or something that is saturated. So what are your advice to kind of stand out?
Well, I will say that if you look at a lot of the really big brands that exist out there, many of them are opting for smaller agencies. That's a trend that's happened for a few years. So that's, again, an advantage for you. The second is I would really look to find opportunities to maybe mentor someone who's built an agency. There's a woman named Lisa from Craft PR in Toronto. I remember kind of the time frame when she started this really small marketing or PR agency, I should say. And now they've grown. They're still not a massive team, but she's been able to really do incredible work. So let your work kind of speak for itself. And then I think the third piece of advice, again, for a small marketing agency, is that you need to actually practice what you preach, right? If you're out there talking about how businesses can use your services and then they go to your social media accounts and they're dormant or pretty quiet, I don't think that speaks volumes about what you do. It's the same thing for me. You know, I see people talking about social media and digital, and then I go to their accounts and they're not active and they don't respond for days. It's not a good look in the social space. So I think being a little more active about your brand building, especially if you're talking about digital marketing, is probably a good idea. And by the way, everything I'm telling you guys that I'm sharing about what I do is freaking exhausting. Like I work my butt off. I'm on Twitter at the wee hours of the night. Sometimes I just like, it's overwhelming. So it feels to me that if you're really going to be in this game, you kind of have to be all in and enjoy it, because it isn't for people who kind of just want to dip a toe in and dip out.
And maybe on that, we have time for a few more questions, but Amber, I know because you have a rapid fire response rate on Twitter, if there are questions we don't get to, would it be okay if our attendees maybe ask them through social media to you? Would you be okay with that?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. And I'll shorten up my answers. So you just fire them at me. Let's see what we can do in the next few minutes.
All right, LinkedIn for B2B.
Great opportunity. I think LinkedIn is a wonderful place to create content. Biggest opportunity there right now, I think, is live streaming. So doing live video on LinkedIn, growing your brand that way, and do regular live video, maybe schedule it at the same time every day. That's the cheapest, fastest, easiest way, even on the B2B front, to get traction on LinkedIn.
Best way to add your target market clients to your social media apps.
I mean, in terms of just adding them as followers as part of the community, is that sort of the question?
So it says clients to add your social media apps. There used to be a spot on social media where clients who followed you could be added to other friends lists in a few clicks.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, so arguably it's a little more cumbersome to do so now, right? So, I mean, unfortunately, even though I talk a lot about automation, I think that there's a lot of manual work that has to go into building up those social media accounts. So you may have to physically go out or manually go out and add them yourself. It's just not quite as easy to do so. But even just a quick little note, I think, again, when we talk about building community in the digital space, I think it is about kind of building that relationship first before you go in for that ask.
Best advice for 2021, what direction do you see in this new paradigm shift?
My best advice is that you need to be patient. I used to have a little sticker on my computer, and it was a Margaret Thatcher quote, and it said, "I'm extraordinarily patient provided I get my way in the end." And I think you can think about that quote in the context that we need patience right now, at the same time, putting in the work, but also thinking about things for the long term. I think we're going to have to be patient to get through the next few months or even the full year.
And perhaps our last question is from Lede, who we know she's been joining us now. This is at every session. So nice to see you, Lede. Her question is, how do you get buy-in in uncomfortable areas of issues that need to be addressed? A case in point, diversity and inclusion, which is a positive given the educational and intriguing aspect of it that is not really appreciated. So a topic that we've seen quite a bit over 2020.
Okay, so I would just say, in terms of buy-in in uncomfortable areas, I think, first of all, you let the data or evidence speak for itself, right? In the case of tech startups is one example. We know that women tend to fare better in terms of having more profitable startups. The data speaks to that. You can say the same thing for inclusive and diverse teams, is that they are more successful. So I would first come to, I don't want to say an argument, but if you're presenting something and you're trying to champion a cause, I would come armed with data. I mean, this is my whole being on Twitter, is that I'm presenting data all the time. I would say, as much as you are emotional about a topic, I have found that I try not to be too emotional, but let the data speak for itself. So I think that that's a great way in order to really present whatever it is that you're trying to champion. And again, not kind of ruffle too many feathers. The third thing I will say, and I think this is more important now than ever, I am very careful about what language I use. I don't mean swearing, but I mean, when I am going to look to people to collaborate, or I'm sharing on social media, I'm very purposeful in the language that I choose to use, because things can be misinterpreted. And I don't think there's ever been a more important time to make sure that you kind of follow that advice, because our tempers are quite hot right now. And I think if you can be cool, collected, and present data, I think you can get a lot more done.
Perfect. Thank you, Amber. So that is enough. I guess we're right at the point of 8 p.m. So that concludes our time for Q&A. So I want to hear and see on a Facebook or even on Zoom, how awesome is AmberMac? I mean, how lucky are we to have her join us today? I can't thank you enough, Amber. I've been following you literally for years. In fact, fangirl moment, I saw Amber at the Elevate conference, September, was it 2019? And you're so authentic, and that's what I truly admire about you. And you talk about when you joined this industry, there wasn't role models per se for you, but you've become a role model for people like myself and so many, as we can see in the chat. So just so awesome to see you. And again, I encourage you, I shared the ambermac.com, very active on Twitter, an amazing newsletter. In fact, you just sent one out yesterday. So I encourage you to sign up for her newsletter, check out her podcast. But again, thank you, Amber. There's newsletter. Again, it's one of my go-tos, so I love getting that alert in my inbox. Before we say goodbye, we do have a few important announcements to make. First and foremost, for those living in Windsor, Essex, or I guess virtual, so you can come from anywhere, the registration is now open for the Rise Windsor Essex Rise and Resilience Summit on February 11th. So tickets are free, so there's no cost to register. It's a full day of yoga, amazing speakers, and there's also an awesome Rise experience box that you can buy that's filled with tons of goodies. So it includes products from Peely Island, Culture Shock Jewelry, Whiskey Jack Boutique, Ground Culture, and many more. And again, those will be delivered by another amazing company, Windsor Eats, which I'm not sure if Pina's on the line. The second takeaway, I guess, is that we are going to follow up with not only the video link to this session, but all of the resources, and try to aggregate a lot of the content that was shared in the chat, especially coming from Amber's side of apps to download. And the last thing, don't think we didn't forget about the awesome giveaway that we have. And thanks to the recommendation of Amber, when we reached out to her, we wanted to do a Tech Trends 2021 session. I'd reached out to say, Amber, like, is there any kind of things we could give away as, we could purchase based on a recommendation to give away for this session today? And she connected us with an amazing I don't know her age, but amazing women entrepreneur, a Canadian entrepreneur named Carolyn Purcell. I think, is that how you say it, Amber? Carlin, sorry. She creates the Success Planner. So every year she launches a Success Planner. So the 21 Success Planner is out. And this is, again, an amazing, it's about a $50 value. It's a book that helps you keep on track, stay positive, and really increase your productivity. And we're excited to announce that everyone that is on the Zoom right now is going to get one of those. We have, we're going to be giving out one to everyone. Again, this is a value of $50. I do want to give a shout out to the Success Planner team who helped us make this happen. Unfortunately, they are dealing with some supply chain challenges. So the Success Planners aren't in today, but as soon as we get them delivered, we will work extremely hard to make sure they go in the mail to you. So I'm super excited. Again, they look awesome. So this concludes our third F5 Refresh and Reload meetup. I want to thank everyone for attending. This has been so fun. I wish we could do this for another hour. All the great questions. And again, a big thank you to Kate Toman, who is our Women's Entrepreneurship Coordinator. She helped really put this together and did an amazing producer job. And then to Amber's husband, who is also an amazing producer. Thank you to you as well.
Good sound.
Awesome. Okay, so until next time, let's stay healthy. Wash our hands, let's wear a mask, and let's keep on innovating. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.